part of the thing that you are stressing here is that there is some element of truth to what the Trumpian base, his voters were feeling. I mean that there is, I think Yang calls it in his book, the war on normal people, right? There
Yeah.
is a war going on against normal people, but I think that some of the things that you have spoken about until this moment in our conversation addresses some of these issues, but it can be hard to zoom in on what exactly is this war on normal people and how can we use our understanding of that to win the next election, whether it be an Andrew Yang that wins the election or somebody else from the
Mm-hmm.
Democratic side of the aisle, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what is the connection between what Andrew Yang calls this war on normal people on the one hand, and then how we can use our understanding of what's going on in that war to win the election? How do you see that connection?
Yeah, there's three parts.
Yeah.
First is it's important to understand the historical context of the American journey and where we are right now versus where we were about 50 years ago.
Mm.
The second is understanding the reality of the basically middle of the country, the non-coastal areas, and
Mm.
their economic challenges. And then the third, we could talk about how he proposes to address some of this stuff. The first one,
Mm.
people rarely talk about, but I think it's kind of cool to chat with you about it, Soren, since
Mm.
you're in Europe. Because if you think about post World War II, America was the undisputed leader in the
Mm.
world in all things: economics, technology,
Mm.
government influence, military. I mean, you think about the day after World War II ends,
Mm.
Germany, not a very strong country, right? France, not a very strong country. UK, not a very strong country. All literally bombed to bits, right?
Yeah.
Japan, literally, nuclear bombed. China,
Yeah.
just trying to get on its feet and self-impose bamboo curtain. Soviet
Mm.
Union starting to get strong, but as a very kind of inefficient economic system. So when you think about that, and you think about American factories exporting and companies growing and very little regulation, so it's like optimized for economic growth.
Yeah.
And so if you're an American,
Mm.
especially if you are a white American,
Yeah.
um, you are on top of the world.
Mm.
You are just killing it. And so I think a lot of people who are angry and when they say make America great again, they're thinking about those times in the 50s and the 60s
Mm.
where we were first place and everybody else was like 10th place.
Yeah.
And now we're not. Now you look at those same countries, Germany, very strong,
Mm.
EU as a bloc, way more kind of leverage against the US than those individual
Mm.
countries were.
Yeah.
China, I mean, oh my God, they used to
Yeah.
call China the sick man of Asia. That's no longer the case.
Mm.
Japan obviously has picked itself up, still, very very strong economy. So
Mm.
we as Americans have a lot more competition than we ever had before,
Mm.
and that means we're not dominating industries like we used to, and that means the American worker does not have as many, is not participating in that growth as much either.
Mm.
So I think the first thing about what's going on is like
Mm.
what Yang is kind of tapping into is that, yeah, people, they may not think about the historical significance of the American journey the way we just talked about, but they feel it.
Yeah.
And the surveys, if you ask people, oh, do you think your kids will be better off than you? It
Mm.
used to be a no-brainer. People in America would, oh, of course they're going to be better off than me. They're going to have a bigger house and more cars and make more money.
Yeah.
And now, if you ask them, most people are not sure. And
Mm.
so that's sort of a beginning of a deceleration of optimism. So that's point
Mm. Yeah.
point two is if you look at the American economy, it's still very strong. It's a $19 trillion economy. It's growing quite nicely. The stock market is booming. But where are the benefits going? They're not going to the factory worker at Ford. They're not going to the manufacturing worker for like Carrier air conditioning or, the farmer. They're going to, places like New York, San Francisco, places like Goldman Sachs or Facebook. And you see that, yes, the economy is growing, but a smaller and smaller percentage of the overall population is benefiting from a larger and larger slice of that growth. And the numbers bear this out. If you look at median income controlled for inflation, it really has not changed very much for the last couple of decades. Yeah. And what's interesting is that depending on if you say this to maybe someone in Europe or even someone in Asia or India or wherever, then they would say, well, you're kind of born into your station and you should just kind of make it work wherever you end up. But that is not the American belief. The American belief system is that everyone who works hard and plays by the rules will make it, and their kids will be better off than them. And now I think people are seeing the writing on the wall. That's like, wait a minute, I'm seeing a smaller and smaller number of winners in a smaller and smaller number of industries in a smaller and smaller number of cities, and this doesn't seem fair to me. And so Yang's approach to trying to address this is twofold. One, as you mentioned, is the universal basic income or the freedom dividend, where there's an economic floor. But the other is really starting to ask hard questions about how are we measuring success for the country? Is GDP and unemployment and the NASDAQ index, are those the three best ways to determine if the country is healthy or not? Or are there other metrics we should be looking at? And I think that's like a very businessman's approach to solving a problem, which is like, let's start by measuring and looking at what the success criteria are, and then we'll figure out the solutions, which is not traditional with politicians. Usually it's like you pick your party, the party already has solutions predefined, and then you advocate for them.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, but it's also a very scientific approach, right? You have to use your measuring in a way that makes sense in order, to look at the empirical, meaningful way.
Yeah, and that's why people love him, but that's also why he's struggling to go mainstream. That approach does not lend itself to the proverbial bumper sticker. Like, Make America Great Again is probably one of the Trump campaign's like strongest cards they can play, because inside of that simple statement, it captures all of these unspoken messages. Like, number one, that we used to be great. We want to go back to that time when we were better. Number two, that we can do this. We can go back and we can rise up. And number three, it's that there are some enemies out there that are making us not great, and this leader is going to defeat them. It's a very compelling soup.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. But in a way, I would argue, I think that math, make America think harder, which is Andrew Yang's favorite slogan, right? It's not necessarily in opposition to MAGA or Make America Great Again. Because the difference in my opinion is MAGA, it speaks to your gut, it speaks to your heart, and math speaks to your brain, and humans are often more influenced by emotion than critical problem solving. Yeah, we're not Spock from Star Trek, unfortunately.
No, we come from animals, and we are animals. And so when someone says, hey, this other tribe in Mexico is taking your jobs, and this other tribe in China is taking advantage of us, and this other tribe, these Muslims, are trying to kill all of us, well, that can kind of galvanize people way faster than me saying, did you know the median income has been flat for the last 2 decades? Like,
Yeah.
Nope,
Yeah.
it's not
I
as
get
fun
what
of a conversation. It requires more effort,
Yeah.
and that's not the society we currently have. It's the opposite.
And yet we've seen that Andrew Yang has galvanized, parts of the American public that have been, some of the maybe some of the victims of these latest technological and economic developments. This transformation that
True.
Andrew Yang himself describes. So in a way, math could be the solution to how you could make America great again. If you think harder, maybe you will come up with better solutions. And that leads me to ask you, can we say that in light of Andrew Yang's political success in his campaign, his has been very successful beyond any reasonable expectations. I think
Correct.
that no doubt about that.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
Is nerdy a new branch of politics? Can math beat MAGA or be the way to actually restore some form of American greatness in the economy and in American society? Is that a viable prospect? Can that actually occur, or is it just a dream, an American dream?
Well, I hope you're right. I want to
Mm.
believe you're right.
Yeah.
But I have concerns because
Mm.
I feel like for Andrew to really break through beyond sort of 5 to 10%, let's say,
Yeah.
he needs to find a way for people who don't love policy and don't love thinking about the nuances of
Mm.
the country's problems, and
Yeah.
he needs to find a way to make it more digestible and more kind of snackable.
Mm.
And also, he needs some overarching theme that resonates with everyone. Now, if you talk to the Yang Gang, we love
Mm.
Matt. We love making America think harder. We
Yeah.
love these kind of, very thoughtful, long form discussions.
Mm.
You know, the Yang Gang loves his podcast interviews because he really talks in paragraphs.
Mm.
And but most voters, that's not what they currently. That's not how they normally consume political information or make election decisions.
Mm.
And so I wish, I hope you're right. I hope that because they know that the country is facing such big challenges, and they feel that in their bones, that they will give Yang a closer look.
Mm.
But it's here's another metaphor I'll share. You could say a hamburger and French fries is not the most healthy meal. You could say that, wow, you probably shouldn't have so much animal protein. Probably should have more vegetables, and
Mm.
it should be locally grown. And we can all agree that that's probably the right call if you ask like doctors and nutritionists.
Yeah.
But people still go to McDonald's and Burger King
Yeah.
way more than they go to their local salad
Mm.
store or the salad aisle in their grocery store.
Mm.
And I worry a little bit that America will go for the Big Mac and
Yeah.
not for the quinoa salad with some hummus mixed in.
Yeah.
That's just too weird sometimes. And
Mm.
and so that'll be the challenge for Andrew to
Yeah.
how do you cross over and get outside of the sort of policy wonks and the
Mm.
even when you talk about the people who've been impacted, like there's this guy, Fred the Felon, who's a trucker.
Mm.
And he actually has this group called Truckers for Yang, and he's
Yeah.
very, very active in the Yang Gang. But when you talk to Fred, he is not a typical trucker.
Mm.
Like, he loves digging into policy nuance and organizing and
Mm.
registering voters and doing all this stuff. That is not a normal. If you picked up 1,000 truckers at random,
Yeah.
Fred would not really match. And
Mm.
so that's the risk. The risk is that we have found the most policy oriented, sort of open minded,
Mm.
data driven people. but that might be 10% of the voting population. But what we need is to win over 51%.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying.
Gang gang 2020. Gang gang 2020. Gang gang 2020. Gang gang. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang. Yeah, yeah. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang 2020. Yang gang. Yeah. I want 1,000 a month, 1,000 a month. I want 1,000 a month, 1,000 a month. Let's get this bread. Freedom dividend. Are all y'all paying attention? Automation gonna sweep the nation unless we get him in. Andrew Yang, 2020 freedom dividend. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, yeah, yeah. First we get this money, then on 420. He gonna give some high fives to some high guys. Decriminalize marijuana so we can smoke if we wanna. Down with the opioid trend, up with the mental health thing. Yeah, math, yo, it's just math. Yo, it's simple math. Yo, can you do math? Yo, yo. Eliminate super PACs, color stars making stacks. Student loan forgiveness plan. Cops wearing cameras and climate change is real again. Science rules. Teachers bringing home some bread. Medicare for every citizen. Andrew Yang, 2020 freedom dividend. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, yeah, yeah. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, 2020. Yang gang, yeah, yeah. Yo, a vote for anyone else is like negative $1,000 from your pocket every month.